This is WECT News at 6. Streaming live on WECT.com and the WECT News app.
To lose the election for something that's not a fair fight is disturbing. I'm not a sore loser by no means, as I said, as long as it's done right.
The former Columbus County Sheriff calling out the new sheriff tonight, bringing his actual residency into question. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Frances Weller.
And I'm John Evans. We're beginning tonight with an exclusive WECT investigative report. It's a state law to run for sheriff and work as a sheriff. You must live in the county where you file. But
where does newly elected Sheriff Jody Green live? WECT's Ann McAdams says the simple answer is we don't know. Ann?
That's right, Fran. This all started with a complaint filed at the Columbus County Board of Elections, and at first seemed too bizarre to believe. The claim stated the address Sheriff Green used to register to run isn't really his home. So we went there ourselves and everything quickly unraveled from there. Our story begins at the lot where he claims to live in Cerro Gordo. It doesn't look like a house to us. At the address Sheriff Jody Green lists as his residence on official campaign documents, we found farm buildings and sheds, lots of vehicles, and a camper, but nothing that appears to be a house. It's a big deal, since by law he has to live here to run for sheriff. So we went straight to the sheriff for answers, and the conversation quickly got heated.
No, there's no record of this with the tax office. They say there's no structure on that property, that nobody has set up trash pickup on that property, that nobody lives there.
We asked if, by chance, he lived in the camper we saw from outside of his fence. He said no, that's where his dogs live. We asked if he lived in a house. All he would say is he lived in a dwelling, and he made it very clear we were not invited back, and if we had any more questions, we could talk to his lawyer. It was a pretty unusual exchange, since we routinely interview elected officials at their home, just like former Sheriff Lewis Hatcher, who lost to Jody Green by just 37 votes.
He should be held to the same standard that I'm held to. I've rode out there also. There's nothing at that address that gave me any indication that anybody lived there.
We called the Columbus County Tax Office for property records and then went there in person just to be sure. Jody Green is not paying taxes on any kind of structure at his registered address with the Board of Elections. We even called the power company. They say they don't even have an account for Green's alleged residence in Cerro Gordo. Lewis Hatcher says something isn't right.
If you're legit, then you have no problem producing these documents, or you have no problem saying, hey, I will take you and show you where my residence is established.
Hatcher isn't the only one who's upset about this. Another voter in Whiteville, who asked not to go on camera because it's a small town and she's challenging the newly elected sheriff, just filed a formal complaint with the State Board of Elections, complete with all sorts of documentation to back up her claim that he doesn't really live here.
I just felt it was so underhanded. You know, if you run a clean race and you run straight, that's fine. We can deal with the results. But when you do things to undermine an election, I feel that's wrong.
Now, Green does have a waterfront house in Cherry Grove, just north of Myrtle Beach. It is a $300,000 home. Before he was elected, Green worked as a highway patrolman in Robeson County. We have also been getting calls and emails since I posted this story a few hours ago, with many people saying Green really lives in Robeson County. So we will continue to follow this.
You know, you said in the very beginning when we first heard about this, it's so hard to believe. Is anybody investigating this?
I was told today by folks at the County Board of Elections that people asked about this, leading up to the election, but it was never investigated. Now that this complaint has been formally filed with the State Board of Elections, we're told it will be looked into.
the two men vying to be sheriff in Columbus County spent the entire day in mediation. That comes just days before a trial where a judge is supposed to decide who the rightful sheriff really is. WECT's Ann McAdams is live now with the latest. And Ann, this is one of the most bizarre situations that at least I've covered since I've been here.
Same here, John. Attorneys for Lewis Hatcher and Jody Green are trying to resolve their disputes outside of the courthouse. And if they can, the trial may be called off. Hatcher says, and the state attorney general agrees, that he should still be sheriff because there are pending disputes about the election that have yet to be settled by the State Board of Elections. Green was prematurely sworn in as sheriff without a certificate of election and so far has been unwilling to step aside. There are questions about missing ballots and potential elections fraud. There are also questions about whether Green even lives in Columbus County, which is required by law to serve as the county sheriff. We also uncovered today that when Green was stationed in Columbus County and claiming to live there, he was routinely driving his highway patrol car to Lumberton and filling up at the highway patrol station there. It is less than 2 miles from the house owned by Green's wife. Highway Patrol officials said they could not speculate why Green was getting gas in a county he was not assigned to patrol.
And this just into the newsroom, we are getting our first up-close look at where Jody Green says he lives. Acting Sheriff Jody Green invited the Board of Elections and the public to tour his property in Cerro Gordo. It was the latest twist in that ongoing effort to determine if Green has really been living in Columbus County, as he was legally required to do in order to run for sheriff. WECT's Emily Featherston was invited on that tour and joins us now. So Emily, I know this was not expected. What did you actually see when you guys got there?
Well, Bob, you're right. When we arrived this morning, none of us were expecting that the first thing that would come up would be Green's attorneys requesting that the board make a trip out to Cerro Gordo to see his property.
An update now on the disputed sheriff's race in Columbus County. Today, the County Board of Elections determined Jody Green is not a resident of Columbus County. State law says a sheriff must reside in a county for 1 year prior to an election. Green beat out the incumbent sheriff by just 37 votes last year. Board members sat through 2 marathon days of hearings and even took a field trip to Green's RV on his property he owns in Cerro Gordo today. The findings, which were not unanimous, will be sent to the state now. The state will decide if this should lead to a new election. We have an update on a developing story we've been following all afternoon. It was a good day for Jody Green. The acting sheriff of Columbus County is one step closer to getting a certificate of election in the disputed November race.
WECT's Ann McAdams went to Raleigh today as that controversial race got a hearing in front of the State Board of Elections.
Today, the state reversed the findings of the County Board of Elections, who voted last month that Green did not really live on his Columbus County farm leading up to the election. The state voted 4-1 that the protesters failed to meet their burden of proof and that Green had provided adequate evidence of his residence in Columbus County. Oscar Blanks, an attorney for Green's opponent, Lewis Hatcher, says he believes they will appeal the board's decision in Wake County Court. A Columbus County voter who filed the protest says she will absolutely appeal. What are you ready for?
The next go round. We'll see them in Wake County.
The board is now issuing a written order for a certificate of election to be issued for Jody Green, which would give him a firm claim to the office. Jody Green declined to comment when the hearing was over today, but we will be keeping you apprised of the next steps as this case proceeds. Reporting in Raleigh, Ann McAdams, WECT News.